running an African startup is very different to running a startup anywhere else in the world. There's the tech OGs, guys who've done it for a while. There's the new kids on the block. There's the VCs, impact investors, government stakeholders, and everybody else. It is a crazy show. And if you have been running a startup or know somebody who has, the one thing everybody has is war stories. My name is Tonee, and my African startup story is about those war stories. It's about trying to find the African inside the business, wherever the startup founder is from. It's about being able to stand up for what you believe in, to keep integrity at the forefront of what you're running, and try not to go crazy while you do it. So even as you listen, whether you're a startup founder or in any of these sectors I've mentioned, may you learn something, be inspired, maybe even start your own business. Welcome to my African startup story. Enjoy. She didn't originally want to come on, and to date I think this is one of the best podcasts I've ever been on. Her name is Nivi Sharma, currently COO of Brick, and this story, you cannot make this stuff up. This was amazing. So, for the record, everybody needs to know you didn't want to do this.
I didn't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Why don't you want to do this? You have a story to tell. Everybody needs to know your story, no?
Doesn't it feel uncomfortable being put on the spotlight?
This is a podcast.
Not Tonee.
This is Tonee's podcast. I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to ask you the dumbest, simplest questions ever. Does that work?
It'll be the dumbest, simplest, most boring podcast on your series.
I so doubt that. I totally doubt that. Okay, fine, let's start. Who's Nivi?
Okay.
Who are you? Start with the most basic stuff. Like, I am, my name is. Don't give me, what is that? Start with the basic stuff.
My name is Nivi Sharma. I'm 36 years old. I have a little baby girl who's 2 years old. And I am the COO at Brick right now.
Cool. And the podcast is over. We're done. You can go home now.
Great. It's so much fun. I really wish it could go on longer.
So I've known you for a while. I've known you 10 years maybe. The first time I met you, you were talking about education, very passionately at an event. I don't even remember the name of the event, but you were the most passionate education speaker I'd ever come across. For me, that sticks. Education is your thing. When did that start? What's that about? Tell me about that story.
The education story. So when I graduated from university, I was convinced that I wanted to do good in the world. And I was convinced that the way in which to do that was to work for an NGO.
How did you come across that information?
I just looked around at all the people that I thought were doing good in the world and were changing the world and trying to change things around the environment, and I felt they worked for NGOs, and so that should be the way to go. And that didn't happen. I quickly removed that weird disillusionment from my way of thinking about changing the world. But I did start. I started working a regular job. And in my spare time, I used to hang out with a group of children who had just lost their father and take them out, do fun things with them. And it was through that I, started speaking to them more about education, about what they're doing at school, what they're not doing at school, what they're learning, seeing gaps in the way that they understand the world around them. And
how old are these kids?
Between the youngest at the time, Joy, was 3, and the oldest was in Form 3. So
13,
yeah.
14, 15, 16. Okay.
About a 16-year-old,
yeah.
And he wouldn't always come along, but his four little siblings would. And then they started bringing their cousins and their friends and so on. Just a group of 20 children living in Gashie.
20 children?
Yeah.
Wow.
Every Sunday. I was this weird tornado in my 20s, doing the weirdest things, like, taking 20 kids from Gashie to ice skating in Panari, or taking every single Sunday. This was my thing.
That is a thing.
And to take full ownership, became completely lazy about it. Within 2 years, it became once a month, and then it petered off, and now they're a lot grown now. It's still an interesting time to look back on, And there were so many learnings that came out of that, There were so many things that I would sit around during the week thinking about, saying, there's this really cool app that could teach Alex how to tell the time.
Yeah.
Or here's this cool music video that could help Melody remember the colors of the rainbow. Who knows? All these little things that to do with education that I didn't know. I hadn't put my finger on education yet, but that's where education started. That's where my thinking around education started.
How did you find the app? How did you find the music videos? How did you find all these things? Were you looking for them intentionally so you can be able to help Melody and Joy and them? Or was it just something you kind of kept stumbling upon? Was it an interest you had? My
sister-in-law got a new iPhone, and she gave me her old iPhone. So that's really where it started. A smartphone in 2006, before
iPhones
everyone really had. Everyone had. Before was it the IDEO? That really cheap Android.
Yeah. The cheap Android Google phone.
Exactly.
Yes, it was
so
called.
before.
You even remember that?
Yeah.
Impressive.
Was it IDEO?
It was IDEO.
It was.
It was stand for the IDEO. IDEO was like a $100, like 5-inch.
Not $100. It was 3,500 shillings.
Wow.
Wasn't it?
That was IDEO 1.
Yeah.
I was thinking IDEO 2. 2 was bigger.
Yeah.
And it had a little ball in the middle.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking of.
It didn't feel cheap at the time, but it just changed the game. Safaricom were constantly sold out. They brought in hundreds of thousands.
And they just were never there.
Never there.
Okay, there you go. So that's where it started. You got a new iPhone from your sister-in-law?
Got an iPhone and understood what an app was and thought it was so much better than a website. And, just scrolling through the App Store, going through the categories and seeing education and so on. So that's how, Melody popped into my head. And Alex, that changed a lot about the way that I thought about technology and how it could be a force of good in our lives.
What's that? Like, what year is this? Like
2007.
5, okay.
Yeah.
And what had you studied in school? Something completely, totally irrelevant. Tell me what it is. I just want to know. Because, did you find arts? What did you do?
Economics and philosophy.
Sweet heavens. Where were you going with that? What was your trajectory?
No.
Hey, yo, my God.
I was just trying to piece together, like, what does all of this mean? What does this world mean? Why are we here? Where are we going? What are we doing? What are we supposed to do? And economics seemed to explain a lot of the patterns that you see around, and philosophy was trying to explain the patterns that we don't see and we should be looking for and thinking about.
Hey, you're so deep. I feel shallow right now. I'm feeling intimidated by that depth. What? I was just dismissing you. I'm like, economics and physics there, and psychology, there's totally nothing.
Philosophy, that's what.
I'm like, how, what? I'm like not in that zone. And did you get the answers you were looking for?
No, but some really good questions it turns out are the right answers.
There you go.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
And then 2007. And then I bump into Professor Bitangin Demo in an elevator.
Bump into. Literally
bump into him in an elevator. He was the PS of ICT at the time. You remember this time? The golden age for Kenyan startup.
Yes. Yeah. I remember it very well.
And I bump into him at the elevator, Kenyatta Avenue, INM Bank building. And
do you know who he is?
Yes. And
why do you know who he is?
Why did I know who he is? It's around the time was it Eric Hirschman was thinking about the iHub. Bitangin Demo was thinking about Konza City. Mm-hmm. So it was, somewhere on the Twitter sphere and blogosphere before KOT was a thing.
Yeah.
I bump into him in an elevator. Mm-hmm. And he's holding this, the Akash tablet. And do you remember the Akash tablet?
Oh, the Indian brilliance.
The so-called, quote-unquote, $35 tablet. And it wasn't a $35 tablet, but it was...
it tried to be.
It got a lot of press as a $35 tablet. And he's holding it in the elevator. I said, Dr. Ndemo, my name is Nivi. Is that the Akash tablet? And he's like, oh, yes. I just got back from India and I'm looking at it. And he started scrolling through and he's like, look, they've put the entire curriculum here of the Indian... Like, if someone did this for Kenya, that would be great.
Yes. I remember that exact conversation as well. Literally the same. He said the same words. Like a memo. This is what you say to Nivi and Tonee. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And So I did it, right? We put a curriculum on a tablet.
You did.
And
No, you jumped it. That's not fair. Totally, you can't do that to me.
It felt like a long time, but it was less than 6 months, and it was so badly done. It was so scrappily done. It was that typical you should be embarrassed of
But
your first
you met him
product.
in an elevator. Mm-hmm. At this point, are you running a startup? What are you doing what's the story? What's happening at that
At this
point?
stage, I am working for an IT training company.
Okay.
You know, dealing with people who are interested in Cisco and Red Hat Linux and Oracle financials.
Do you realize
Database administration training.
Economics and philosophy.
I know.
I just want you to understand where you're coming from. You know what I'm saying? How did you get into that?
So actually, when I came back, I had interviewed and I was supposed to work for Citibank.
Because where did you study?
I studied at a place called Ithaca College in upstate New York.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know why Citibank was the place to work for. I'd applied to Citibank,
You were going
Barclays.
to work in a bank.
I was going to work in a bank. That was the plan.
Okay.
And I'm not sure. That was the plan after about 20 interviews with NGOs. That didn't go well.
Your NGO thesis.
My NGO thesis didn't go well. It seems like such a blur now. I know the story sounds terrible, but it's a very blurry and confusing story. And then the banking crisis happened, and
That's 2008, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and was it 2007 or 8? Yeah,
Both of them.
Yeah, I
7 and
guess,
8.
yeah.
Around that time, yeah.
and it was very early on in the crisis, and you know they just said, look, we've got a hiring freeze from the top.
Yeah.
So just hold on a month or so. This should blow over.
Yeah. You should blow over. That's a tweet right there.
And I thought, well, you know, my job at Citibank is waiting for me. I'll just vote some time. Can you imagine me working at Citibank right now?
This would be so bad. Oh my god.
This interview would be so boring.
There would be no interview. What are you talking about?
I would be telling you about commodities and I can't even think of another word to make up.
I'm dying inside. I'm like, yo, it's gonna blow over in a month or so. Oh,
Right.
that was fantastic.
So no, I did a few odd jobs while waiting for the banking crisis to blow over.
Yeah.
I was selling Sony TVs at one point.
What?
And yeah, really random stuff. So, but you know, Sundays was what I was living for.
Yes.
Sundays was what I was waiting for and preparing for and spending my spare time working towards. And maybe I thought that that program, that Sunday program that we were calling, I don't know whether it was Amka Kenya or Maisha ni Matamu, would turn into an NGO one day. I think I in the back of my head somewhere, I thought this could turn into a real money-making NGO.
Money-making
It
NGO?
really was. You know, I come from an entrepreneurial family. Like, I've had a dad who's had, like, a money-making harebrained scheme, like, every year of my life. So, like, it was always like, yeah, I could really raise some money on this idea.
Oh my god. There's always a scheme.
There's always a
somewhere.
scheme. There's
Yeah.
always a scheme.
It's such a Kenyan trait. I have a plan.
Yeah. What's the weirdest scheme you've seen the grown-ups around you do as a kid?
I think the biggest one for me was those pigs, rabbits. It's always had to do some domestic animals.
Yeah.
Pigs, rabbits. The latest one was those. What are those birds called?
Quail. Quail eggs.
Quail eggs was witchcraft.
For witchcraft.
You people don't get that stuff? I don't understand how quail eggs became a thing. 600,000 shillings, man. I know someone who put 600,000 shillings in quail eggs. I'm like, what? That thing is not an inch in size.
This is the real podcast, man. The Kenyan startup. My Kenyan startup. Like how I turned quail eggs into a Ponzi scheme.
Oh my god. Then there was also passion fruit and then French beans. I've seen all of them. What was the weirdest squeeze? What is the craziest one you had?
Oh, my parents were sitting around one day and they said, you know what we don't have in this world?
Mm-hmm.
Identify, like, you know, step one, identify a gap in the market.
I can already see this
The
big
gap-
bag.
The gap that my parents identified in the market was passports for Somalis. So I said, listen, Somalis got to travel, right? So they worked
government to do that. It's not a product you sell on the street.
No, this was the beauty of it. They worked. Listen, Tony. My parents are good people, and they really are good people. I've seen, always. I've spent this. Listen to the whole story. You can cut this out later, but it's important you hear it. Just to be clear, I've spent a lot of my spare time sitting in my parents' office waiting for them to finish work.
Okay.
After school, holidays and so on. There was no camp. There was no football. There was no extracurriculars. It was just sit in the office. Here's some paper. Did you bring your coloring pencils? No. Here's a biro. Okay. But so they my dad must have bumped into the ambassador of Somalia to Kenya in a grocery store somewhere or something. Who knows how my dad does these things. And so they had a meeting and they said, look, how about we set up a printing of these passports, set up the whole operations. They've got, my dad's got a background in printing. Yeah. My mom's got a background in software.
Okay.
And so
your mom's got a baground in software.
Yeah.
You realize that's
that's a big
right. We're gonna go back to that.
We'll go back.
Okay, we'll go back to that.
And so they're like, how about we do this? We'll do the operations. Mm-hmm. You sell the passports.
Who's selling?
The government.
Okay,
how the government, how you go to Nyaya House.
So, yeah,
right.
Okay, cool.
And for every passport you sell, we get $4. Okay. They said, done. So, they went to Malaysia. You can't just print a passport on
you can't.
HP printer.
Precisely.
Okay.
That's
So they went to Malaysia, Indonesia, and got this passport printing machine. It's a big deal. There are all these regulations and things you have to go through.
You shipped it here.
Shipped it, and I think the printing was actually ended up being done in Dubai.
Yeah.
And it was a deal. It was a good solid deal. It was a win-win-win situation. Actually, the people who got those Somali passports had some of the most modern Somali passports, we have now, the new ones. Back then.
This actually happened.
This actually happened.
This is not a harebrained plan.
This is not a harebrained plan.
This is real.
This happened.
Oh my gosh, this is real.
Except for one small flaw in the plan, which was that the Somali government is not the most stable government.
No, it's not.
And changing hands every 5 minutes.
Wow. Wow. You actually pulled it off? That is a genius. I have to give him that. He's a genius. And they were printing the cool new...
They're printing the new model, the ones with the chips in them.
Yeah.
Back then.
What?
And real, passports recognized by the US government, passports that these people could travel with. Because, it's not everyone in Somalia. Somalia isn't...
it's not like a high traveling nation, right?
It is a high traveling nation.
It is a high traveling nation?
It is a high traveling. You think about the refugees, and obviously a refugee is someone without a document.
Yeah.
But there are so many Somali diaspora. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting culture, anyway. So
you would think. I know that the refugee community is a very high number of people. I worked for the UNHCR in my 20s, and we processed 14,000 people to go to the States those days. I know that, but that was under the UNHCR, and they got special permits and stuff. But then passports.
They have family. They've got friends. They've got an entire entrepreneurial spirit and culture, and they're doing deals.
Yeah,
they're pushing. If you've seen the statistics around M-Pesa transaction is in Italy alone.
No, tell me about that.
I think. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's something like 17 billion shillings a day.
Wow.
In Italy alone.
That's a lot of money.
And so
$170 million a day.
I don't know.
That is.
And so
even if it is 10 times that, even if it is 7, that's
either
ridiculous.
way. This is a population that have pockets. They travel a lot.
Yeah.
They're almost fearless in their travel.
Yeah.
And so, market gap identified. Boom, partners,
money,
mouth to mouth. All of it, right?
The president, keep printing. And that's the background you came from.
That's the background I came from.
Harebrained success stories are not common in this world.
It didn't work out.
Why didn't it work out?
Because, like I said, the government, was changing every 5 minutes, and for the $80 or whatever they were charging for the passport per person, they were not even paying that $4 back to, that was part of the deal.
Oh,
and so And so at one point, my very disorganized and scatterbrained father said, "Oh, just pack it up. Let's, shut it down." They closed the partnership, and then you've got to like return that printer, properly to Malaysia and so on. So he did that, and then packed up the office in Dubai and said, "Oh, like there's a lot of furniture. We could use it in Kenya. So put a shipment in." And
came and opened a furniture shop.
No.
Okay, that was not far-fetched.
That was not far-fetched.
That's not far-fetched.
But put it on a ship, and ships take like 90 days or something, and before it got here. And during those 90 days, we started that war with Somalia.
What?
Right? Do you remember when like our journalists were like wearing full fatigue and like and reporting from
that wasn't KDF and Somalia.
And then they interrupted this container and I read Mombasa port. They're like, it's full of these fake IDs, like all the badly printed ones, like date of birth 2026 or something instead of 1986. And they're like, someone's printing fake documents for
and your dad shows up. What's good?
And he's like, well, we had to return them to the Somali embassy. But I'd still like those chairs and tables, please, for my office.
Did you get them?
I don't know. It was such a stress. No, at the time, like we're laughing about it now, but at the time it was really worrying because we were being investigated by counterterrorism, and they were actually very good. They actually did a very thorough investigation. They knew a lot about us. They knew a lot about our family. They knew, and they sat down in front of my parents, their whole team, their office, and said, well, we've really cleared these people. Don't worry. I know it's been a scary, intense time, but anyway, it was a comedy of errors, to say the least.
That's not even what I'd say was, but okay. That's crazy though. Your mom does software. How did your mom get? Tell me about your mom in software. Like that's not even a thing. Like
no,
not doing it must have been like
not in the
80s.
70s, 70s, 80s.
What was up with that?
I don't even know the full story of what inspired her to start. She would be an interesting person to ask. I think it was again a market gap,
There you go.
And she'd heard about this guy Larry Ellison,
Oracle founder.
Yeah, and started reading a little bit about Oracle. Said, well, no one else is selling that in Kenya. Let me try that. There's all this Microsoft. Let me throw a spanner in the works.
Your family
and
everything.
And she had no software background, so she went and taught herself this. She's got an accounting background. But between an accounting background and, understanding what an ERP needs to do, she just figured it out and then just like bulldozed through the barriers to get there.
And then did what with that?
And then became the sole distributor of Oracle in
the whole country.
In East Africa.
That's a beast.
I know.
That's monstrous. That's huge.
Yeah.
But she also had to train the people who came and took Oracle, right?
Yeah.
So she started a training school.
So what she realized was while she was selling Oracle. So if I come to your office and you are the finance manager and you're in your late 50s and you've been running your finance using Tally or whatever it was at the time for the past 30 years of your career, and I'm like, this is better. No matter how much better it is, the chances of you adopting that are minimal, right? Yeah. So she realized that she just needed to build that ecosystem. She needed to, so every day from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. she would run free training, Oracle training.
6 p.m. to every day, 5 days.
Yeah. That childhood was so boring.
Because you had to go for it?
Hell no, I'd be sitting in the office and, waiting for her to leave so we could go home, right? Doing my homework there and so on. So, she would just train people. And then that became a training center and so on. It kind of just grew. Yeah.
And then people started paying, or did she keep doing it for free?
So there was free training, and then it became a department that became a revenue-generating department. Then it became a company of its own that I ended up working for at that time.
Wow. You were doing your homework there, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
2 years.
This is after New York?
Yeah.
And you still, when you came back, you're still waiting for Citibank to
I'm still waiting for the banking crisis to blow over.
Did it ever blow over? Did they ever call you back?
Yeah, I think so.
They did?
I think so. Was that a Was that an ego trip or did that happen? I think they called back
They
and
actually
said,
called
"Oh yes, let's continue the."
When do you think they called you back? 2010?
Who knows?
Because that,
Yeah.
it took forever.
Yeah, it took a long time.
And then how did you get to a point where you started doing your own startup?
So Bitang in demo.
Yes, we were in an elevator.
We were in an elevator.
And a cash tablet.
And
the spiel.
And I thought, and it really aligned with what I'd been doing anyway. This whole like, let me save this YouTube ad for Joy. Let me save this app for Alex. I was already like curating bits of educational content.
Yeah, for these 20
already.
kids
I was thinking, right.
Yeah.
It just, and so, and around that, it was a perfect storm. And, this is how Eric sometimes describes the iHub, engineering serendipity. So he was starting an iHub then.
Yeah.
And I was hanging out there after work, figuring out how do we do this? How do we take what I have in my iPhone and transfer it into something that looks, well, in my head, it was the Akash tablet then.
Yeah.
And how do I build it and how do I learn enough about the Kenyan education system and the curriculum and how it's delivered in the meantime. So that's how Ilimu started.
You make it sound so simple, but it wasn't. You make it sound super, this is so easy. We're just gonna beat it together and it worked. But that must have been like totally insane.
No, it was, you know what my first memory of you was?
Of me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Of hanging out with you.
All right.
You used to have this beat up,
Alright, you have to start with that.
a beat up Land Cruiser? Range Rover.
Range Rover.
You had this beat up Range Rover.
It wasn't that big.
It was a beat up Range Rover. And me and you had said, like, let's go to this meeting. I said, I've been going to these meetings for Vision 2030. And they're thinking about education. Let's go talk to them.
Yeah.
And the two of us didn't have money for fuel. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
Do you
I remember that super clearly. I remember that
And
like
we
it was
both
last
didn't have
week.
fuel. And I was like, this is so embarrassing. And you were so embarrassed. And we were just like... like we talked, and a lot of it was talking a big game. Like the first competition I ever won, it was apps for Africa or who knows what it was called, was screenshots. Was just
Same here.
Tosh had picked his font
Hey,
and the background, and I'd been like, all right.
We even used the
This
same
is how
designer.
it's yes.
Come on now.
Screenshots. I won my dad a BlackBerry. Dad's
Nice.
like, cool. I'm so proud of you.
Keep doing
All
what
right.
you're doing, though I don't understand it.
I know. He's like, but what did you build exactly? I'm like, I built a PowerPoint presentation, Father. There's nothing to be proud of, but you can say thank you for the phone and keep your mouth shut.
Let me finish it, Father. Wow. Yeah, no, Tosh did a lot of our design work in the beginning.
Yeah.
And he's going to be here like next week. But
Oh.
yeah, that's amazing. That we came from, that was 10 years ago, clean. Like, that
And
was exactly
and
10
that
years
was the
ago.
other thing about the iHub, remember? It was, it wasn't just the space. It wasn't the bean bags. It wasn't the foosball table.
The colourful walls.
The colorful
coffee
balls.
shop.
It was being able to, turn around and tap someone on the shoulder and say,
Help me.
hey, do you know how to make a logo? Thinking that that's what a brand was. And,
Hey, and he was around at that point.
Right.
Yeah. That was really something. And Elimu was born.
And Ilimu was
Simply by
born.
people around you. You won a BlackBerry. You kept... What did it... Because you've not done software. You still have your economics and philosophy to, rely on. But
Well,
you've done some stuff in-
I'd always, from childhood, I'd always been sitting in on these classes. I'd learned from Lotus 1, 2, 3 to SQL. I've sat in on enough technology being built that by the time I was going to university, I knew that I could code, but it was not my calling in life.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
I wasn't built to code, but I understood the basics, and I still feel confident enough to build software.
Yeah.
Or to oversee software being built,
So
which
when
I
you,
think is the
when you
important.
decided Ilimu is what... First of all, Ilimu, the name, we're going to talk about that in a bit. But then when you decided you're going to build a product, take me through that little process of who are you building the product for? Obviously, you've got these 20 kids. You have seen their cash tablets. As we said, engineering serendipity is happening. What was that about? What was the big vision?
By the time we, our MVP, I decided was going to be a revision platform for science KCPE. So just revision notes for science standard 8 KCPE students. And I didn't want to, start from scratch and figuring out all the content of the curriculum. So found a partner in Moran Publishers, which was a stroke of luck as well. And agreed with him, like, let me take this revision book of yours, copy paste it into an app, into little bite-sized lessons. And then for every bite, I would add some flavor. So a video or a sound clip or something to help solidify that lesson into memory. Yeah. And at that stage, it was still very much memorization. KCP still is, sure, yeah. And so that was MVP of Ilimu.
Yeah.
And
how long did it take you to do that?
I don't remember. I think the Ilimu launch was in 2010 or 11, and I was dating someone who was related to Martha Karua at the time, and she came as a guest of honor for that launch.
Wow!
She heard what I was doing, and she was ready for
Your strokes of luck are many.
It was really for her it was good too, because she was getting ready for her presidential campaign.
There you go.
And one of her big things was she knew Uhuru was on one laptop per child, and she said, I want to do one tablet per child.
Yeah.
And she really, sat and took the time to understand what this was, what the pitfalls were, how tablet technology compared to laptop and so on. And so for her, it was good. And so I remember during that launch, I had 10 Samsung tablets. By this time, I'd realized Akash tablets, you need a minimum order quantity of 60,000. And,
What?
And so it was like, well, let's take a step back. And so we had 10 Samsung tablets. And I'd asked some people to help at the iHub. Oh, and of course, the day before the launch, the devs have quit. The devs have quit. They're like, it's not going to work.
Wait, what? How did they quit the day before the launch?
They're like, we got another job. It pays better. And we've been working on this bug, but we haven't fixed it. So, pole sana. So then the devs quit.
2.5 hours. I'm telling you, man. I'm going to be here for a month editing all of this. Okay.
Jeez.
So they quit. They quit.
The devs quit the day before the launch. There's still bugs in the major bugs in this Android app we were building. And
how did you raise money for those devs? How did you raise money for that section of your life?
That was some savings. It wasn't much. It was they charged me. I was looking back at it today. I was going through an audit, and I was like, there's a bill somewhere for $20,000 or something. It was $3,000.
Wow.
And
that's 300 G.
I know, right?
Right now, can you even buy a computer for that much?
It wasn't much, and so, and they had just it's two young guys that just started their own business, working on their own logo, this and that, and I'd convinced my mom to pay for part of it. I was like, look, you pay for part of it, and I promised her equity. I never gave her any equity.
Jacked your own mom.
Jacked my own mom. But I didn't want her company building it. I was like, let this be a separate thing, and help me out and so on. So it was. So the devs quit. At the launch, I had 10 Samsung tablets with a very buggy Ilimu on it, and this was a big launch. And of all the money that I'd spent the money on that party, man. There was booze, there was snacks. Do you remember?
Oh my gosh, I remember the party so clearly. I was so clear.
And there were games and T-shirts.
Yeah.
And so I had like 10 of my friends, and I was like, hold these tablets. Do not let anyone take this tablet from your hand and start exploring this app on its own, because it's going to crash and be embarrassing. You're only allowed to show them science, parts of a plant, leaf. That's the only page that works. The others will lead you down into a bug, all right? Does everyone get it? And then you show them this video. Of course, people went embarrassing themselves and me all through that launch.
Oh, man. You're laughing now, but that day you were stressed to death.
Yeah.
What?
But I looked cute. I had a Kiko Romeo dress, I remember.
Wow. Oh my, you can always count on the dress to cover the fear you got. That's what it is. But there you go.
There you go.
And you launched
That was
it.
fun. And we launched Ilimu, slowly fixed the bugs.
Yeah.
There's still bugs.
Yeah.
Grew it. We're going to do secondary next, and realized actually one of the reasons why some people's results are still not improving is because they don't know how to read. So we moved into literacy.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it was learning as you went.
Learning as I went.
Basically.
Yeah.
Just kept learning as you go. And
Right.
how long did you do this for?
2015, I left Ilimu
2015.
as the CEO.
And you started in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5-6 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
What was the hardest thing of the entire 6-year period? What do you remember, like a moment when you were just like end of everything, like you were at the end of it all?
There was a lot of education is one of the easiest places to have a hard time, because no matter how shit of a day you're having, like how many bugs you're finding, how many times your app crashes, when you show up in school, it'll lift your spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So like you've still got these short bursts of serotonin being, pumped through your system and telling you that things are okay, and
It's
like
gonna
wake
be
up
all
tomorrow
right.
and do a bit more of it.
Yeah.
So the schools made that part easier. The teachers I struggled with, because the teachers are the most resilient to change in technology, and
Because they've been doing this before you came, and they'll keep doing this after you leave, like the previous 15 things.
right, they've learned through chalk and talk for their whole lives, and they've been teaching it their whole teaching lives. And now here's someone who wants to take a picture of your kids holding a tablet, and it's going to take 20 minutes to hand those tablets out and get them to get started. And so, at what point during that day are they going to learn how to calculate the area of a rectangle? And
Practical things.
right.
Give me
That's what the
specifics.
teacher wants,
That's what
right?
she wants, yeah.
So it was the hardest bits were walking into schools and and finding the tablets and cabinets. And if Ilimu could come out of those cabinets in the classrooms without the tablets, it would have been easier. But that's not how software and
not how
hardware
software
works. So
Not
it was
yet, at least.
and so it was. That was the hard bit, and I always got the sense that if this was an American product, it would be accepted more. Like if it was an imported software, the teachers would be more likely to say, would do the workarounds to make it work. Whereas because it was a Kenyan product, there was this immediate dismissal. This isn't working. This isn't working. This isn't
Mistrust.
working.
Almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can never come up with something
Right.
cool. This is not our thing.
Right.
5 years, 6 years you did that.
Right.
That's a long time.
It was, and it was. It took a long time for me to realize that the impact that we should be counting was not on how many students were using it, because we were nowhere near the millions. I think even now it's somewhere around 100,000.
Yeah.
But 100,000 students using it for 45 minutes a day is very different. And I need to think of. It took me a long time to realize that that's more of a depth impact versus breadth impact.
Yes.
Of
Yeah.
a million users sending an SMS a day is. I shouldn't be comparing those as apples and apples.
Software is tricky in that we never know what the metrics we should measure are when it comes to education. Do you think that we've fixed that? Do you think that that's changed? Because now we know. Before we didn't know. Before everyone was trying. It was all about growth at all costs and scale.
Right.
Has that changed?
No, they still ask the same questions, like what are the learning outcomes, what are the results, where's the research, and what do we want from education? Do we want better KCPE results?
Yeah.
Is that a good result?
Is that a metric?
And everyone in the grand scheme of things knows that no, that's not the importance. That's not how we measure a good education system, because we know that there's people who have done terribly at KCPE and KCSE and have done wonderfully at life.
Yeah.
and
I mean, that
the other
also
way
done
around.
really well.
Yeah, and gotten nowhere. And so, yeah, and that's the sad thing about education is often we don't have enough runway before those results come pouring in about this is great, we're doing really well now, and here's an anecdote or here's a story.
Yeah.
And if only we had known that 2 years ago, if only we had known that 3 years ago, if only we had known to even talk about that or measure that or think about that
If
2
there
years
was a
ago.
reference point,
Right,
if there was
right.
anything at all.
Right.
Was it harder because you were a woman?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Same effort, everything?
Same
Was it easier
efforts.
because you're a woman?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I never thought of I've been in many spaces where I've felt conscious of my gender, and interestingly, that time of my life, it didn't happen. It didn't happen often.
Yeah. Now it happens more?
Yeah.
So, before we get to now, so 2005, you're like, cheers.
15.
Leaving. 2015, sorry, you're like, now, cheers, leaving. What led to that? Why did you do it? What happened? How was that? Because this is your baby. This is something that you built from nothing. And you've gone through all the craziness of dealing with all the crazy people in this game.
All right.
And you're done.
All right.
How did that go?
So then President Uhuru Kenyatta had won the election. Oh, I'm laughing.
I've seen you laughing.
And his campaign promise was one laptop per child.
Yeah.
And had approached a Kenyan hardware company called Brick to help figure that out.
Yeah.
And Brick were good at hardware, and I was next door, and we're good friends of the company, and good at education.
Yeah.
So first brought me in as just to talk and think about this, and as that as we started imagining what this product would look like and feel like and be like and what it would do. It made more and more sense for me to transition and start thinking about the infrastructure problems of why Ilimu was locked up in cupboards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there was already someone at Ilimu who I felt could lead the company.
So you just left?
Yeah.
Like, hey, see you guys.
Pretty
was
much.
that transition period or anything, or you just kind of told them, hey, I think you can do this?
That was, it's still, under transition. I'm still a board member and
Still own the
an
company.
advisor and a shareholder. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it took me I had to give up a lot of my shares.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Cool. Do you miss it? Was that a good decision, a bad decision?
It was a good decision. It was a good decision. It was Ilimu has never raised venture capital.
Yeah.
And so it was it still is a bootstrapped company, which is nice. I was very adamant at the time that not every company needs to raise capital.
Yeah.
It was kind of a narrative that was being shoved down our throats everywhere we looked because
Still is.
yeah, and you throw a wet tea bag in Nairobi and you hit a growth hub or a accelerator or an incubation that is
Wet
telling
tea
you that. But yeah, Ilimu was a bootstrap company, and it was like, well, if we don't sell anything, then we
Don't raise anything.
and we don't take anything home.
Yeah.
And that was it. And we stayed small and lean, and still have that. And Brick is a venture-backed company, which is here is some jet fuel and put it in your tank and step on the gas as fast as you can, and people will still complain that you're not doing it fast enough.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to have been able to do both.
I told you, there's some stuff you just cannot make up. So that was podcast part 1. In part 2, we talk about the next thing in her life, what is new, what has changed in her entrepreneurship journey, and women in technology. She might have a couple of things to say about that. Catch you in the next one.